I'm going to go ahead and just do that now. Okay, good. Thanks for the prompt. The answer is yes. You'll get it, and that recording will include anything. We're not using any slides for you per se. So what I'll try to remember to do is when we get to you, I'm going to stop sharing screen, and that should make you a little bit bigger.
That sounds good. That works. Do you save these on like on YouTube, or are they basically like under like podcast?
We're actually uploading to the Bench Builders YouTube channel, but people can access those also through the website. So I think literally what happens is that they go from the website, and that website links them to the YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, and we've done, so this is 20, is this 20?
Correct. Yes.
So all 20 of our webinars are recorded and on our website. Cool. We started the first week of COVID.
And hey, Carla, we're glad you're with us. I'm going to go back to you for a second, Rachel, and that is, as you're doing what you're doing, how do you avoid the distractions of all bunch of screens? Do you typically keep a lot of screens open when you're presenting?
No, I just typically, I got a dual monitor, and I'll put stuff over there. Like if I'm referencing, I share sometimes different content than I'm looking at. So sometimes I will have like, I typically don't really use many slides unless I absolutely have to for visual example of something. But I mainly look at primarily one screen. It's just easier. If I'm doing like music or something, I might put that on another screen, but yeah.
I appreciate it. You know, I'm taking notes for every time we have a conversation. Hang up and take notes. Hey, folks, as you're joining us, we are glad you are with us. You probably have noticed that you were muted when you came on, but you are not going to be muted, and you'll learn more about that in a moment. We want to hear from you. We want to hear your questions, and therefore, if you would, open the chat box, and that is how we hear from you and your questions. Note those chats. Let us know what your questions are, and then my role simply is to monitor that and try to work your questions in while we're together live this morning. So we're glad you're with us, and we are going to be very respectful of your time, and so we're going to give this probably 30 more seconds or so, and then we're going to get started.
Sorry about that. And let us know in the chat where you're joining us from. Excellent, send that to all panelists. Yeah, let us know. I am in, we were saying before, it's not even super relevant necessarily where we are now because everyone's at a computer, but I'm in Baltimore, Maryland. Houston.
And I am normally in Chattanooga, Tennessee, but today I'm in Columbus, Georgia.
Chilly Seattle, Washington. And early. Thank you, Jason.
It is awfully early for Jason.
He's committed.
So, Rachel, you back ready?
Yeah.
And Rhonda, are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right, then I'm going to take a quick pause, and then we'll get started. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Business Building Q&A. I'm Mike O'Neill with Bench Builders, and I'm looking forward to being your host for today's Q&A session. Joining us today from Baltimore, Maryland is our expert panelist, Rachel Druckenmiller. Welcome, Rachel.
Hi, glad to be here.
We're very glad you're here. And later in our time together, you're going to be hearing from my colleague, Rhonda Beard. And Rhonda's going to be kind of sharing with you what might be the challenges that your employees are experiencing when they transition from being managed to managing others. Hey, welcome back, Rhonda.
Thanks, Mike, and good morning, Rachel. Thanks for joining, everybody.
We're glad to have both of you with us this morning. We launched these Q&A sessions to help you as business owners, as key leaders, and as HR professionals stay on top of what is most important to enable you to build your business. I shared with you earlier, the nature of this is a Q&A, and as a result, we want to hear your questions. Go to the chat box, and that's how we'll kind of monitor that. And anybody who has registered will be getting a recording of our time together. Rachel asked just a moment ago, who do we have folks from? Some of you have already begun responding. I'm speaking to you from Dalton, Georgia. I think you mentioned, Rhonda, that you are actually speaking today from what, Columbus, Georgia?
Columbus, Georgia. Yes.
And you would normally be speaking from Harrison, Tennessee.
Right.
And we have Rachel, who is in Baltimore, but we have folks registered who are in Pennsylvania. We have them in Washington State, as we've already seen. We've got them in Texas. We've got Rachel back in Maryland. We even have folks in Canada. So we're glad you are with us. We're going to move right into why we're together, and I think you're going to be really in for a treat. We've asked Rachel to join us for a variety of reasons. You're going to see that pretty loud and cleared. And of all the things that she could speak on, and she's a gifted speaker, we asked her in particular to kind of help us as participants get a better feel for what is resilience and how does that factor into today's environment we're working in. And so, Rachel, I'm glad you're here. I have to ask you a question right off the bat that we already got before we even started recording. And it's from someone who says, I don't manage anybody, but I am in sales and I'm a single mom. And her first question is, will what you're going to be sharing with us today, does that apply to her as well?
If you're a human, what I'm about to share applies to you. So if you have a pulse and you're with us today, then yes, this applies.
As Rachel and I were talking about what might she speak on, we kind of settle on this notion of how to reset your mindset. Rachel, I'm just going to jump right into that. Are people's mindsets impacted by what's going on nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, big time. I think what happened, at this point, it's crazy to think it's been 5 months, but 5 months ago when everything kind of shifted and shut down and got locked down, our brains were essentially overloaded with threat. So when we are in a situation where we're facing something unfamiliar, the brain likes things that are familiar. And so when we're in a situation where we're facing a situation that is unfamiliar, that seemingly came out of nowhere, that threatens our safety, that threatens our survival, our brain gets really, really revved up. And it gets revved up in the area of the brain that's responsible for keeping us alive. And so the parts of our brain that are responsible for higher level thinking and problem solving and creative decision making and innovation go offline. So imagine that, this is very oversimplifying the brain, but imagine like you have this part of your brain, this kind of inner part of your brain, kind of more reptilian part that's really saying, okay, I want to stay alive. I want to stay alive. What do I need to do to stay alive? When we're in a threat state, that is like hyperactive, on fire. We're in like this alert and alarm state. And what happens when that alert and alarm state is active, because we're afraid, we're frustrated, we're angry, we have one of those heightened emotions, the part of our brain, like our prefrontal cortex, which is responsible for, really that higher level thinking, it shuts down. And so in the very moment where we need to access that way of thinking the most, we can't access it. And then we get even more frustrated with ourselves and with other people. And I think a big part of it is because we don't even know how our own brain works, and because no one's ever told us. And so why would we? So a lot of it is that we are in this state where we have all of these threats, and the demands on our energy and time and cognition are outweighing the resources that we have to respond to them. And so as a result of that, we feel just completely out of control. We feel fearful. We feel anxious. And so all of those are normal responses to what happens when the demands exceed our ability to respond to them.
I think I shared with you before we got started that we started offering these Q&A sessions as a direct result of COVID. Clients were asking the same questions, and we said, why don't we just start a Q&A session, because those questions are probably kind of universal. And therefore, we've been coming together throughout COVID. We're almost 5 months into COVID. And from your standpoint, you're talking about the way our brain kind of works.
Mm-hmm.
How do you sense people are right now, even 5 months in?
Well, I was doing a session yesterday for a group. I think we were talking about this beforehand. It was about 300 people talking about how to boost resilience, how to be a resilient leader, and to be hopeful in the midst of uncertainty. And right before we got on the call, there were a couple folks that were just saying, I really need this today because I am particularly tired. There's like the new degree of tired that's kind of a weariness and a despairing kind of tired. And I think for a lot of people, what happened in, March is people thought, by Memorial Day, we'll be doing what we want. So we had this timeline in our mind of it will be over at this point. And then as things started to unfold, people began to realize pretty quickly, oh no, wait, schools are shutting down through the end of the year. Oh wait, summer camps are canceled. Oh, my vacation plans are off. Wait, kids are not going back to school in the fall. And so I think part of it was we had an expectation of what was going to happen. And then when that didn't happen, it's like we got, doubly frustrated and upset. And again, just feeling that sense of despair and desperation of how I thought this was going to be temporary. And it now feels like it's the long haul. And I'm not sure what I can do to respond to this in a way that leaves me feeling sane. So I sense that that's what's happening to a lot of people. And interestingly, and I know that you know this, but I was involved in a car accident back in May. The first weekend in May, I was hit by a car while I was running and got a fracture in one of my vertebrae that I'm unfortunately, recovering from. Still not there yet, but certainly feeling much better than I was 3 months ago. And so I feel like I had the benefit in my mind of knowing, hey, your life's not going to really start to feel normal in terms of you being able to move the way you want to until probably at least October. And so I had the benefit of an expectation that was much longer than at that time, the first week of May, than most other people had about when their life was going to get back to normal. And I think that actually has benefited me because I had already written off my summer plans. I had already written off that like, all these things aren't going to happen. I can't run anymore for now. I can't go hiking. And I really think that was a gift in a really odd way. And I think the challenge for a lot of people is that this doesn't seem to have a finite endpoint. And so it feels really heavy. And I, happy to dig into this further, but I also think a lot of people haven't really fully let themselves grieve the loss of whatever they have lost. And that is part of the process we have to go through to be able to move on.
I would like to pursue that just for the sake of the benefit. I came across you first through LinkedIn, and I began to really enjoy your uplifting videos. But where I really stuck, and I kind of go, I've got to get Rachel as one of our panelists. I hope she can work us in at some point. It was while you were filming yourself from the hospital bed, trying to inspire others. And that was just very heartwarming. I watched that and I was very moved by that. In the same way, I was almost equally moved, but in a different way, with your posting yesterday. And that is, if you are not following Rachel, and she'll give you the contact information that's in our material here. If you don't follow Rachel, you're being left out. There's over 15,000 only on LinkedIn I know that are following you. But you did a video yesterday, and you showed another talent, and you sang the song "I'm Still Standing." I watched it, and then you spoke about that. Can I ask, for those who have not seen the video, what prompted you to just pick "I'm Still Standing" and to kind of let that be the inspiring message for yesterday?
It's been a song. Songs come to me randomly. Our mutual friend Teresa Quinlan asked me, she's like, so are you somebody who someone will say something and then all of a sudden you just go into song? And I was like, I kind of do. I kind of do that. Like I think in song lyrics sometimes. And so I'll have a song come to mind and I like can't get out of my head. And I'm like, well, I guess I'm supposed to do something with that. And they're topical. So it might be something like Ain't No Mountain High Enough or Hakuna Matata or This Little Light of Mine or Let It Be or something that's relevant to something that I'm going through, or You've Got a Friend. And for me, I felt like that sense of COVID already knocked everybody down anyway. COVID was like the invisible truck that knocked everybody down. And so I dealt with that because like other speakers, 100% of my business went like poof, or maybe 80% of my business just went poof in the second week of March. And I was only in my first year of business and I'm like, what am I going to do? And, fortunately, as someone who speaks about resilience, there was definitely demand. And as I mentioned before, I've done like 70 presentations since March. And so fortunately, I've been able to continue to do my work. But I just felt that sense of I had been knocked down already. I had gotten back up, kind of gotten my business back together. It was just starting to feel good. And then like literally got knocked down again. And so for me, the message is that like and this is really what resilience is. It's about how we rise back up stronger and wiser and more insightful after we've been knocked down, and how we respond to that and the meaning that we make of that. Like I remember lying in the trauma room at the hospital the day the accident happened, waiting for test results and that kind of stuff by myself. And I didn't have my phone with me. So I pretty much just had to like stare at the ceiling for 9 hours. But I remember thinking to myself, how am I going to use this? All right, there's a story. This is like literally what I do. I've sort of conditioned my brain to make meaning of things that happen. And I remember lying there thinking, all right, there's a story in here about getting back up when we get knocked down. And for me, that's what I'm still standing represents. It's like, and so that's why I wanted to share that, because I feel like a lot of people feel like they're knocked down still, like really knocked down. And so I also wanted to do that as a word of encouragement of, hey, look, you know what? You don't be looking the way you want to look right now or feeling the way you want to feel, but you are still here. This thing has not gotten you yet. Like if you were watching this, then you're still here. So keep going. So for me, it was the combination of all those things that led me to share that message.
Well, I'm glad you did, because it kind of fits perfectly in what we're discussing today. We kind of picked a topic knowing that we could go several different directions, but you speak on resilience, and you shared, which I thought was really interesting, that there was a silver lining, if that's the right term, of what happened to you. And that is, you knew from the outset that things were not going to be different until October. And therefore you kind of already established in your mind what that timeline's going to be. Yeah. Now, it didn't speak to how you're going to change your way of doing business to adapt, but we kind of characterize our time together as how to reset your mindset. Assuming that most of us who are watching you right now need that, how do you walk us through the process of resetting our mindset?
I'd say the first part really, and this is, I would say what is represented by what I shared in terms of knowing my timeline, is accepting what is. The first part of this resilience piece is that let me accept reality as it is. I may not like it. Like, I don't like the fact that, I have to homeschool my kids, or if that's the situation that you're in, or that, I'm trying to figure all of this out and I don't know what's coming next. We may not like what is, but when we resist what is, it takes a lot of unnecessary energy. It really does. Like energy we could be better spending figuring out what we could do instead, or how we could find solutions to what's going on. So resistance takes a lot of energy. And if we choose instead to say, I'm going to accept, I don't like what's happening, but this is what is happening. This is the current reality. This is not the forever reality. This is just what I refer to as, this is the next normal. So I don't use the phrase the new normal. This is just the next normal. There might be a next normal tomorrow, and then there might be a next normal next Monday. And I wrote a post about that we can share afterwards as well, if you'd like, in the notes. But I think the first part of it is accepting what is. All right, this is the situation. Okay, now knowing that this is what's going on right now, how am I going to respond? Or what is one step that I can take to move closer to something that's going to get me to where I want to go? Who could potentially help me? What resources am I lacking in response to a demand on me, and who might be able to help me increase those resources? So the more we can recognize and connect to the resources that we have access to, the less overwhelmed and sort of desperate and hopeless we feel. So the first step is that acceptance of what is. And then I would say that the second part is really around recognizing that what we focus on expands. And this is in the article too, and we can share that too, but what we focus on expands. And so I had done such a consistent practice leading up to the accident of really recognizing what my, bright spots and small wins, small victories, little moments of joy. I'd been tracking those in a journal for a month and a half leading up to when the accident happened. And so as a result of that, my brain was already conditioned to be looking for good things. And so even though in the midst of that day, like if I could go back and redo the whole thing, of course I wish I wasn't hit by a car. You know what I mean? Like we can sit there and be like, yeah, I wish COVID didn't happen either. But it happened. And so now how are you going to respond? You may not have controlled the thing that happened, but you can control your response to it. So a lot of that is really getting clear on where am I recognizing where we're placing our attention on a daily basis? Who are we surrounding ourselves with? Who are we listening to? Who are we talking to? And are those life-giving conversations? And if they're not, seek out people that are life-giving. I mean, we can hang out every day on LinkedIn. I'll give you something that's life-giving. if like that's only even one person who will do that for you. But it's very important that we are I like to call selective sifters. So I loved baking growing up. You guys know, like the sifter, right? That sifts out flour, makes it really thin and fine. We have to be more intentional about what we let in, whether it's through media or through people that we allow to influence us, through conversations, through things we read, movies we watch, shows we watch. We have to be more mindful than ever about what we're letting in, because it does affect our state. And, if the first thing you do every morning is look at the death count for COVID, I mean, you're probably not going to have the best day. Like, do you need to know that? I'd really ask yourself, if you're going to be checking something, do you need to know that? Or is it just a curiosity? And when you look at that, does it make you feel any better, or does it bring you to a place of anxiety and fear? If it brings you to a place of anxiety and fear, stop doing it. I mean, very matter of factly, just like stop doing it. Like we can choose how we respond to things around us, and we can choose where we place our attention. We may not control a lot of other things, but those are two things we absolutely can control. So there's two other things, but I want to pause there just to see if there's any questions or thoughts.
So let me see if I'm hearing you correctly. We don't have the advantage of seeing what people are doing while you and I are chatting. I don't know if you can see me or not, but I've got my red pen and I'm writing frantically because this is great stuff. Let me see if I've heard what you've said so far. And that is, it starts with accepting. You may not like the circumstance that you're in, but you need to first accept it. And then what I heard you say is that then you have to be very, very intentional. And that is, be intentional on what you focus on. And the way you might do that is, I love this term, selective sifting. And that is, if you choose up front, what is it that you might be exposed to, then that automatically filters the kind of things that you could be potentially focusing on. Meaning, what I heard you say is, if you focus on the good things, the blessings that might occur in a day that would normally be overlooked, stop, acknowledge what that is. Am I hearing that correct so far?
You got it.
You also said that you also have to be very intentional where you can. Now, we know we're dealing with business leaders here on this call, and therefore sometimes you have to work with people who are negative, or you work for someone who is negative. And I suspect what you're trying to say is, but it doesn't mean that you have to be, but where you can, I hear you say, be very purposeful on who you choose to be around. I don't remember the exact term you use, but there are folks that we could be around that just suck the energy out of us. I don't know what you would call those folks, what a nice term for those folks would be, but you mentioned that you have that, and you have a couple more points. I'm going to be looking, if you don't mind, I'll take a time out. So Monique writes, by the way, absolutely, my fingers are tired from typing so much. This is great material. All right, so you've got people not handwriting with pens, but actually typing. Thanks for sharing that, Monique. So let you continue on. You had some other points you want to make.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'll mention that if you not capture everything, don't worry, because we're going to send you the article. I've written an entire blog post about everything I'm talking about already. So you can just like relax and listen and take it in, because all of this is in an article already. So I just like to mention that sometimes that being fully present and not being feeling like, oh, I have to make sure I get that. It's like, it's okay. We got you. It's already captured. So I just wanted to say that as a next step. Another thing that I think is really helpful in terms of getting through this season is to be intentional about asking for help. So a lot of us struggle with that, especially in leadership positions, because we feel like, well, we're the ones that are supposed to have it all together, and people are looking to us to know what to do, so we can't ask for help. And that is an issue of pride. And I've dealt with that before. I mean, all of us, I think, have dealt with pride in some capacity and not asking for help. But it's one of the things that we have to do if we're going to get through this. And I remember at the start of all of this happening, the day after the accident, a woman who I had not met before, actually, but who I was serving on a panel with about engaging employees virtually, she reached out to me the day after the accident and said, oh my gosh, I heard what happened. I would love to set up a meal train for you and your husband. And my first reaction was like, I mean, I know about those. My church does them for people when they have had a baby or they've had a surgery or something like that. But, you know, I don't know if we really need that. I mean, like, we have the means to take care of this stuff, and my husband can just do everything. Because, you know, I was in a back brace, and, you know, I couldn't bend, lift, or twist. So I couldn't help with household things. And I was in pain, especially the first month, a lot of pain. And I remember my first response was to do what a lot of us do, and to be like, I don't need that, thank you. It's kind of like someone's saying, here, I would like to give you a gift. And we're like, I've got too many gifts, thank you, I'm all set. And I decided very quickly that that was an absolutely ridiculous response. And then I messaged her and I said, I would love to have a conversation tonight about doing that. And so we got on a call, and she spent 40 minutes with me, set up the meal train, said, I insist on delivering you your first meal. Tell me your favorite place. Tell me exactly what you want. Don't hold back. And her husband dropped off a meal the next night. And then for the next 5 weeks, you know, we didn't really have to worry about making meals for ourselves. And it was such a gift at a time where I had just felt really knocked down and really tired. And I was still working. I mean, I'm the primary breadwinner. And so I was still working full time. I did a presentation 2 days after the accident happened, because standing was actually the recommended position for me to be in. It was the most comfortable way for me to stand. I probably should have taken that first week after off to just like relax and rest, to be honest with you, but it was a distraction. My presenting is so life-giving for me that it was actually, I think, one of the things that helped me to get to a better spot with everything more quickly. And so that receiving of help, that willingness to receive help when people offer it, and to ask for help of people if there's something that you are struggling with that somebody could potentially help you with. And I like to think of shifting, you know, it's not asking for help. Maybe it's, if that's a challenge of, oh, I don't want people to help me, because you have some connotation of the word help, say, hey, somebody wants to bless you or somebody wants to serve you, like, let them do that. And so that's one of the things I've learned. And then this lovely woman, her name's Lynn, she reached out to me a couple weeks after giving me the meal and was like, oh, by the way, I make these bracelets, and tell me what like word you'd want to put on one of these bracelets. So it's one of those My Intent bracelets. And so I wear mine every day, and she brought it over to me, and mine says Overcomer. Just as a reminder to myself of like, you know, you've overcome a lot of stuff, Rach, and you're going to come out of this. And so just let people who want to help you, and be very mindful of even making a list of the areas of your life where you need support, where you're struggling. And I guarantee that if somebody, at least one person in your life, if they knew that you were struggling alone, they would be upset with you that you had not reached out to them for help. So if you've been avoiding asking for help in some area of your life, I hope this is a nudge for you to take action.
It's nudging, also kind of follow-up question. And in my mind, I'm kind of differentiating accepting help from asking for help. Mm-hmm. First of all, do you find that most people struggle with both?
Yeah.
And of the two, which do you find people struggle with more, accepting or asking for help?
I think people have more trouble asking for help. I think if someone's taken the step to offer it, that means that you don't have to put yourself on the line as much. But I do know that a lot of us can probably all think of a situation where someone's offered help and we've been like, no, 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 I'm fine, I'm good. I'm fine. Lying. Uh, and again, that's often pride coming up, or it's insecurity, or it's an identity conflict of, I am not somebody who needs help, because maybe we grew up very independent, or the people that we lived with taught us, you know, fend for yourself. And for me, that's, I mean, part of the, as much as it's been a gift to have two parents that are entrepreneurs and run their own businesses, and that's been my model for what work should be and why I ended up in the spot that I am running my own business, you know, it also instilled in me a little bit of this independent streak of don't be needy, because, you know, you can figure it out yourself. And so that was never explicitly said to me. And I've seen my parents ask for help for things, you know, it's not like they're too proud to do that, but it wasn't anything that I heard consistently growing up. And so, you know, it's something that has been a challenge for me and something I'm learning to do. And now if somebody offers to help me with something, you know, I still might have that moment of hesitation, but I'm pretty quick to respond and say, actually, yes, that would be wonderful. Thank you. But I think a lot of people do struggle to ask for help because they don't think they're worthy of it. They think they're going to be a burden. What if somebody says no? Well, then you're no worse off than you were before, frankly. But I really think those are some of the reasons that people don't ask for help.
Christina, who's on the line with us, writes, so true. I broke my toe recently, and I realized the importance of accepting help when my 17 and 15-year-olds both separately told me to stop trying to do everything and to let them help me.
Yeah.
We know Christina, she helps us a great deal at Bench Builders, and so I appreciate her sharing this. So I could get better. It was very humbling and fulfilling. Interesting, humbling and fulfilling, both.
Yeah.
As a parent. Does that kind of factor into your recommendation in terms of resetting? And that is, if you are willing and capable to reset, you may be able to accept help,
Yeah.
and even ask for help. Is that part of the resetting process?
Yeah, it's a big, because part of resilience, I mean, a lot of resilience is drawing on inner resources and strengths and skills that you have. But another part of resilience is recognizing where the limitation on those things hits and what you do not have the ability to, or the capacity to do on your own in a moment. And so, you know, I think it's really important for people to be mindful of recognizing that mindset shift and how important that is. Because we're not going to get to a better place if we're not willing to ask for help. I mean, that's really, and especially for leaders, because again, leaders have a lot of insecurities around, oh, I don't want anyone to think I'm inadequate or that I can't handle everything. No one expects you to handle everything but you, frankly. So this is a swallow your pride and show some humility moment and say, all right, honestly, be honest with yourself, an honest self-appraisal of, well, where could I use some support or help, and who might be able to help me with that, and take that step and reach out to that person and say, hey, even frame it as, it's really hard for me to ask for help, but you're somebody who I know could help me, so I'm reaching out. Most people will probably laugh, you know, have a little smile when they see an email like that, and be very gracious in the response. People are so much more gracious than I think we give them credit for, and we are naturally people who are, you know, human beings are naturally connected at our core. And we, I think at our best, we want to support each other and elevate each other. And so I really think just giving people more credit for their response to what might be a really scary ask for you, to recognize that the worst thing you think is going to happen probably is not going to happen.
Rachel, I'm glad you mentioned leaders, because the folks who are with us today are leaders. When you're speaking to groups, when you're working with companies and you're speaking to leaders, do you get pushback that leaders are not supposed to ask for help?
Oh, they don't explicitly say it because that would demonstrate humility and vulnerability, which are two things a lot of leaders are not comfortable with, frankly. So I don't get pushback from them directly, but I hear if I talk to their HR leaders, they might speak up and say something. Or if I get a group of leaders, like I've been doing, some leadership training around, compassionate leadership and around mindset and self-awareness and around empathetic communication. And I find that when you put them together with each other, when you put a group of leaders together with each other and you give them the opportunity to have, small group conversations and talk about this stuff in real honest ways and share stories with each other, that they're much more apt to be honest about an area of their life where maybe they haven't asked for help, that if they looked back, how might they do that differently? And so I think you just have to create the safety net for that. And that's a lot of what I do, is essentially create a structure and a system that allows for psychological safety so that people feel that they can open up and talk about these things, because they don't have many forums in which they can do that. And so that's the type of space that I aim to create, so that there is more comfort in doing that.
You mentioned psychological safety. We had, as one of our early panelists, our mutual friend, Emily Elrod, and she spoke to that very issue, and that is COVID is kind of challenging psychological safety, and we have to be mindful of that. In a few minutes, we're going to move to Rhonda, but I want to make sure I allow enough time for you. I think you had at least one more point you want to make sure we covered.
Yeah. Yeah, the last thing I'd say would be, when someone comes to mind for you, like, reach out to them. I mean, we all have situations happen. I've had people do this multiple times since the accident. Like, I had people just that I don't even talk to regularly that, maybe even 2 months ago texted me and said, "Hey, been thinking about you a lot. And, how's your recovery going?" Just those little moments, those little pings from people. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It doesn't have to be lengthy, to check in. And a lot of people need for us to check in with them now to see how they're doing, because there are a lot of people that still are, wearing a mask and putting up a facade about, "I'm doing okay." And then they get off, they shut Zoom down, they start crying. I mean, it's hard. It's hard right now, and it's hard for people for different reasons. And so I think it's more important than ever that we are intentional about reaching out to people. And I know our friend Kevin Monroe is really, really good about that. Like, he'll watch a video and he'll call like right away and say, I just love that song, or I love that message. It's just those little things from people that let us know that we matter to them, and that they see, and that we see them, can prompt us to not hesitate, but to reach out to them and to check in. So that would be kind of the last thing that I would say as well. And Jason says he loves that about Kevin too, right? Kevin is just so intentional in that way.
Well, this probably come as no surprise. Kevin also has been a guest with us. And here's interesting. What his topic is how do you add zip to your Zoom? And one thing we know is you add zip in large part by who you invite to come on as an expert panelist. You've had lots of zip. Would you be able to stay with us for a few more minutes? I'd like to ask Rhonda to speak to something, and I'd like to come back to you. And this is really good stuff. Rhonda, I want to move to you, because as we were talking before, as we were getting questions this week, one thing that we were seeing is, okay, how is it what we're hearing from Rachel, how might that apply to folks, particularly folks who are transitioning from maybe being an employee to be a manager? Can you speak to what you're seeing out there and the challenges that those folks are experiencing?
Sure. And I think, Mike, that one of the things that we started doing, as you mentioned, is on our webinars early on, we were focusing on all of the challenges of COVID. And then we intentionally kind of made a decision that we've got to start focusing on business needs and human needs and things that businesses need to kind of run in some sort of normal fashion, because a lot of businesses are still running as normal and still need the same sort of help, still need the same assistance and guidance as they might have before COVID. Some of that is changed, and many companies have had to be resilient, have had to pivot, have had to make changes. And so one of the things that we wanted to talk a little bit about today that we spend a lot of time with different clients on is, how do you move somebody successfully from a non-management position to a management position? And I think some of what Rachel says plays in nice with this, because when people become managers, some of them think, okay, now I've got to put up this persona. Now I have to know everything. Now I have to, I have to be the go-to person. I have to be the one helping other people. I can't necessarily ask for help. So I think a lot of what you've said, Rachel, absolutely resonates with this topic is as you're moving people internally, make sure that they know and they're comfortable and they have an environment where they can ask for help, that they can have other people and other resources available to them, and that you have a plan in place on how to train them. So moving into management is a very, very tough transition to make. And a lot of people, a lot of companies, first of all, think, well, this person did a great job, so I'm going to move them to manager. Well, a management job is a new job. So just because they did great in the job they were in as an individual contributor doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to do well as a leader. So you need to really evaluate, do they have the leadership skills? They might be a great worker, they might be motivated, they might be smart, but are they a good leader? Because that's a whole different skill set that many companies fail to really look at and determine if someone's going to be successful in that role. So they get thrown into it and they learn as they go and they learn as they make mistakes. And they a lot of times don't have much guidance. So, promoting people internally is absolutely a great thing to do because you have people who know your processes, know your people, know your environment, your culture, your history. But if they haven't been a leader, they don't know that part of the job. And one of the things that we focus on quite a bit with customers and clients that we have is the change in friendships and relationships when you go into a management role. It doesn't mean that you have to lose those friends, but it's a different type of relationship at work. And people need to be prepared for that. Many of them aren't. They think, and they may tell friends that they've worked with, yeah, I'm going to be your manager now, but don't worry, nothing's going to change. Well, things are going to change. They don't have to change necessarily for the negative, but they will change. And many people aren't prepared for that. They're not prepared how to handle that. They're not prepared emotionally for some of those differences in relationships that they're going to have. And they may not be prepared for what management is going to expect from them. So it's a whole different role. And one of the things as an organization you really need to be focused on is making sure you have plans in place, not just to transition people into management roles, but how are you going to train them? How are you going to support them? How are you going to make them comfortable stepping up and saying, I don't know how to do this? And setting that environment for them so that they don't feel like I can't ask, because if I ask, I'm going to be viewed as a failure, or maybe they're going to think they made a mistake and put me in this role. So a training plan is very crucial. And we actually have a program that we've used with many companies, and it's called New to the Bench. And some of the things that are focused on are friendships. How do friendships change? How do you delegate? A lot of people who have been in a role where they've only been responsible for themselves and now move into management, they have a very difficult time delegating. It's really hard to try to delegate things that you may have done yourself, and you have a certain way of doing them, and you may think that nobody else is going to be able to do it as good as I do or the way I do, but you can't do it all. So it's a typical problem with someone moving into management to take on too much because they want to do it all, they want to be successful, and they don't want to ask for help. So having a plan in place, and again, really making sure you have an environment where people feel comfortable stepping up and asking for help, or letting you know as their manager what kind of resources they need, what kind of help and support they need. Make sure that as people are transitioning, that they know that you expect them to speak up, that you expect them to ask for help, and that one of the things we have here on the slide is treat them like a brand new employee. What would you do for a new employee coming in? How would you train them? What kind of resources would you provide them? So treat them the same way. Make sure that you're providing what they need in their new role in the same way you would a brand new employee that doesn't know much about their job. Big mistake that a lot of companies make, not intentionally, think that you're doing the right thing for people by promoting them internally, but you just have to plan for that and make sure you're setting them up for success.
Rhonda, this is good stuff. I'm going to bring Rachel back in. Let me see if I can. Rachel, you're still with us, correct?
Yeah, you're still on mute.
Okay, can you unmute, Rachel?
There you
There
go.
you go.
You had to give me permission.
I apologize. I didn't realize I had such power.
That's okay. I am unmuted
You
officially.
are unmuted. Matter of fact, can I ask why you mentioned that? You actually entitle your business Unmuted, and your website, I believe I'm saying that right, is Unmuted Life. Tell me a little bit why you chose that. Why is that term significant to you?
Well, I silenced myself a lot growing up, and like I said, sure, I loved to sing, but I wouldn't sing in front of people. I was very shy. People are usually, it's funny, people assume that they assume that how you are as an adult is how you've always been. And I'm like, no, very, very different. I was not very confident I mean, I was confident in certain ways. Like I was more confident in who I was than probably most people my age, which is why I was comfortable not doing things that everybody else was doing. Like when everyone else was like trying, like smoking in middle school or something, I was like, nope, not into that. I had a very clear sense of principle from a very young age. And that helped me in some ways to really stay in integrity with myself for much of my life. But it also led to experiences of social rejection and not feeling included, because when you're in middle school, everyone just wants you to do what everybody else is doing. And to paint a picture for you, when I was in 5th grade, I was always very studious, like had to get straight A's and everything. I was very much defined by how I did academically and had a very high bar for excellence. And I was in 5th grade and we had been told we were going to have a quiz. And so I did what any good 10-year-old would do. And we were 10, 15 minutes into class. The teacher had made no mention of the quiz. And I was like, I studied. So I raised my hand. I was like, Miss Fostel, you told us we were going to have a quiz today. At which point, you suddenly have no friends. You know, you have like lasers in the back of your head from your classmates of like, we were really hoping she wouldn't notice. But I didn't. That's like an example for me of how I was unmuted. That's very unusual for a 10-year-old to do something like that. But it's like I was willing to take the social damage that I don't think I knew the extent of it necessarily, because I had a very strong sense of values and principles of what was right and just. And too bad for you guys if you didn't study. Which again, like I said, doesn't make many friends and that in life at all if you're going to be that kind of person. And I've built some self-awareness since then. But you know, I did not share my feelings with people. I had a lot of creativity inside of me. I loved to write. I wrote poems. I wrote stories. I sang, and I just didn't let anyone else into that world for a long time until, you know, I really started sharing my writing 6 years ago when I started a blog. I used to have a blog called Rachel's Nourishing Kitchen. It's still active, but I don't post any new stuff on there, about kind of my health journey with holistic health and changes that I've made in my nutrition and in my mindset and in my way of approaching things that really helped me get to a better place of thriving. And so it was a process that happened gradually over time. The singing started to come when I came back from a semester abroad in Spain in college, and I was in gospel choir, and I came back, I tried out for my first solo for gospel choir, and I just got a bit more emboldened. And so it has been a progression for me of getting unmuted. And my ultimate expression of that was, I am starting my own business, you know, September 1st of last year, starting my own business. And this is what I stand for. And this is what I'm about. And I'm going to sing to you on LinkedIn. I'm going to sing to you on a stage, and I'm going to use my voice to share these things that a lot of people think, but are not willing to talk about. And I am now a pretty open book, and I'm honest about the ups and I'm honest about the downs. And I find that that's what people, I think, are drawn to about the messages that I share, is that I hate the word authenticity is so overused. My friend Joseph Myers says that he likes the word genuine better. And so I feel the same way. I feel like the feedback I get from people a lot is, gosh, thank you. That was very refreshing and honest and real and genuine. And for me, that's what I'm aspiring to do, to just be real with people and give them permission in whatever they're going through to not feel alone in it, and to find the confidence to show up more fully as a more expressed version of who they are in every area of their life and work. And that is really what motivates me to do what I do.
Rhonda, you spoke about the challenges of the transition from being managed to managing. how would you speak to what Rachel just said? And that is just be real. Does that figure into what we would be advising our folks?
Well, absolutely. And,
Yeah.
something else that really kind of fits in there too, and what we train and advise a lot of people on as they're moving into management roles or trying to develop their skills in management or supervisory roles is to, when you do admit that you need help, as Rachel said, there's some humility there. And people appreciate that. They appreciate knowing that you're human. Everybody's human. Everybody makes mistakes. Everybody needs help. Nobody can do it all. And I think, again, setting that stage and setting that environment where people can speak up and people can, be real and be honest with each other, whether you're a manager or not a manager. But as a manager, like we talked about, just, be yourself, and you develop better relationships with people if they feel like you're being honest and real with them. And then better relationships obviously leads to better leadership, and people follow you better if they feel comfortable with you, if they feel like you're being honest, you're being upfront, you're being human. They're going to look to you as a much stronger leader. They're going to follow you. They're going to respect you. So people that try to, put up that facade or that wall of I'm here, you're there, they don't get that respect necessarily. So there's a lot that can come from many of the things that Rachel's has demonstrated in just being open, being honest, asking for help, in how you develop relationships with other people, whether the coworkers, your boss, or people that work for you, because that honesty and openness definitely helps develop better relationships, whether it's, work or personal. But as a leader, having relationships with your people is definitely going to lead to better performance and engagement with them.
So Rachel, here you're finding that what you're sharing with us dovetails beautifully with what it is that we are doing. What we're hearing from you dovetails almost in lockstep with what other folks have come on and said, but you do it in your own unique way. And we can see why you are in as demand as you are. I want to switch back in a moment. I want to ask you to speak to something because we have business owners on this line also. And I want to ask you as we start to wrap up, and I know we're going to finish here pretty shortly. You were delivering everything you were doing in person right before COVID. And now you've had to make that transition. That is significant. Can you speak into the business owners that we have on this call who will be watching this recording who also need to make such a radical transition?
I mean, the cool thing that happens when we're in a situation that we've never been in before, we have the opportunity to create a new reality beyond where we are. And so for me, that was really exciting of thinking about, first of all, as a business owner, I was like, well, I didn't see it as having any other option. I know some speakers have just been like, I'm out, I'm not doing the virtual thing, not my deal. And for me, I'm like, this literally was not an option. It was, it's like sink or swim, and sinking wasn't an option. So what does swimming look like? And so what I would invite people to do is really think about, hey, what's possible now that wasn't possible before? And to really talk to your people and have conversations with them and ask them, what are some things that you think we could be doing right now to rethink our approach to what we do? What are different ways, new and different ways that we could connect with our clients and customers and get feedback from them about where they're struggling to see if there's any way we can meet their needs in a new way? What are we doing right now that is working? I think a lot of people are so focused on, well, we can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. We can't do this anymore. That is not helpful. And that also shuts down the creative part of your brain that allows you to come up with solutions. And so what is way more beneficial and generative is to ask, well, what's possible now? What might we do? More of these kind of design thinking questions. What might we do that maybe we couldn't do before, or that we didn't even think to do before? And when I think of the situation, what's been going on, I mean, I've gotten in front of people that I would not have otherwise had access to because of a series of things that happened, like doing an 8-minute TED style talk for free for this motivational speaking summit, basically. And then having somebody who's an association president sitting on the line saying, we need a keynote speaker for our event for several hundred people in July. And, oh, okay, that door would have never been, I would have never even been aware of that door if all this hadn't happened. And so for me, it's also given me a focus of saying, no, this is my area, because a lot of people now are talking about resilience. like, this is what I've been doing for 13 years, like well-being, talking about like, this is my area of expertise. And so I'm like more so owning my space right now of being like, I'm a wellness expert. I've lived it. I've learned it. I've studied it. I understand it, and I'm continually learning more. And I'm continually my own lab for all of this stuff. And so I find that, and I just bring a certain energy to what I do. That people bring me in because they bring me in for my energy, and then they ask me back because of the impact it has, and because I'm very, very big on practical, actionable takeaways, not just like rah rah, here's a quote, go away, feel good. Because a lot of people are doing that, and I don't think that's particularly helpful. It can be for a moment, but I really try to be like actionable in the stuff that I'm sharing. Sometimes I have my rah rah talks, but there's usually some meat to it. And so, that's what I'm finding right now is just really think about, what are you doing that's working currently? How can you pivot? And it's been like another buzzword lately, but what's a way that you can pivot and try something that you didn't even think to try before, and see if it works. Like, now is the time to do some experimenting and imagining and designing and testing and asking for feedback. I mean, people are a captive audience. Most people are stuck at home. And so we can reach people in a way, especially people that were previously traveling all the time, that maybe we couldn't before. And so to me, I'm like, well, this creates an opportunity in a way that we didn't have before. And I got to tell you, I really enjoy sleeping in my own bed next to my husband and not in like 10 different hotels. I mean, I like to travel, and I will still continue to do that in my work, but I'm really enjoying this break from that and being in my own house.
Rachel, you mentioned that what differentiates you, or at least you think so, is that not only are you very, very high energy, but you add substance to it. And I want to remind the folks who are watching us today, and that is the blog articles that you just shared, we're going to include that in the follow-up packet. So know that the substance will come in the follow-up packet to go with this very high energy that you shared with us today. I want to thank you for your willingness to share that energy, share that passion, and the substance that goes along with that. Rachel, thank you for your time this morning.
Yeah, thanks for having me. And if you guys want to connect further, I'm at Unmuted Life, on LinkedIn and at unmutedlife.com. And I have a resilience toolkit that if you want to be a part of the community, you'll get that as part of that as well.
Let me speak to that very thing. I want to go ahead and put up your contact information so folks do actually have that, and that will be in the packet. Also, as a reminder, we have already lined up next week's expert panelist. Richard Montanaro is going to be joining us. He's a C-suite consultant, and he's going to be speaking to the whole challenge of how do you plan when the future is as foggy as it actually is? How do you make strategic decisions in this type of environment? So I think you will find Richard most interesting. Rachel, again, thank you for your time this morning. Rhonda, as always, it's good to have you with us. And in particular, I want to thank the folks who took the time to be with us this morning. You have things you can be doing other than that, and you have blessed us by being with us today. We do appreciate your willingness to do so. And so on behalf of Bench Builders, thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rhonda. And thank you, those who have registered, for being with us. And we'll hope you will join us next time. In the meantime, be safe. All the best, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.